Hello and welcome to Ivory Blush Roses. My name is Lisa and I'm so grateful you're here with me today. It's the holiday season. We're going to get going on our December Ramblings project. This is a kit that I purchased at a store in Lee's Summit, Missouri called Quilter Station, and it's a crazy quilted Christmas tree. This one is very primitive. It's a wool Christmas tree. I pieced this quite a long time ago. The original instructions call for it to be embellished in a variety of colors, and it has some rusty metal jingle bells and stars on it, and that's just not quite my style. But I loved the idea of the tree, and I've been stuck on what to do with it for a long time. When I was at Hobby Lobby a few weeks ago, I found these wonderful white shiny stars, and I knew immediately what I wanted to do with this Christmas tree. So we're going to be doing the seams in green and white and adding stars to this tree. And I can't wait to get started on this with you. Let's take a look at what I have so far for supplies. I've got my instruction booklet. They have a number of seams. This is some of this stuff that you can stick down to it and stitch right over it. Truthfully, I don't really care for any of those seams, so we're going to choose ones out of my stitch book. And so I have that right here. So I'm going to set this booklet aside. Now we have our stars. I also found some other little tiny stars on Amazon. They might be 3/16 of an inch in size. Let's choose threads. Let me show you what I have so far, because my idea is to do this mostly in green and white. And so the fabric is already green, so white is the obvious choice. But I think if everything is white, it's probably going to be a little bit too much. Let's take a look at what we have. I don't want to go too dark with this. I want it to stay fairly light. Okay, so we have an assortment of threads. I'm thinking I really like the color of that one, but it might be too light. That might be a better option. That's too yellow. When I look at stuff in the viewfinder, sometimes I can see things differently. This might be too blue. We'll see. So I'm going to keep these in. I think I'll keep that in. I may keep that. I don't know. So there's kind of my main assortment of threads. But sometimes you like to add a little bit of sparkle. So let's look at what I have here. That is a 712 in the rayon. And I love that one. That's one of my favorite threads. I do have a lot of brass in my home. Maybe something that's kind of an antique gold would look good. So I have that one. I also have this whole selection of things. And I prefer to stitch with the Krynic braid. Let's put both of those out. And then I have this one. And this is a silk sparkle thread by YLI. It's very fine, but if you want to put just hints of sparkle in, it does an amazing job. Let's regroup here and get all of my things in rough order here. I like to keep my things so I can see what I have. I also have put a few white threads in here. These are just standard embroidery floss. Well, we're going to fill that all up with just that white. So those are the ones I'm liking best. Those are the alternates. And then we have some gold threads. We have that one. Let's focus our attention now on what types of seams we want to do. In my little stitch book, I've been keeping track of seam ideas in this book for a long time. I love having this because if I see a seam that I like, I just diagram it out. I do it in black and white because that way I'm not constricted by color. And so I can see lots of possibilities. For instance, look at this one. This one could be a fun one. We could put a few beads on this. I didn't think about that. But wouldn't that be fun done in white with little starry things? I keep thinking sort of in the realm of snowflakes and stars and wintry things. I don't want to do trees necessarily on a tree, but I want to do sparkly starry things. So as I look throughout this, that's kind of what I'm looking for. There are just a lot of possibilities. And when you go through, things jump out at you and you say, oh yeah, that one would be great. And so I do this process pretty quickly. And see, I love this seam, and it makes a beautiful sparkly seam, but it's a little too big for this project. So I'm looking for smaller seams. And once I've looked and I kind of have a familiarity, then I just pick one and start stitching. Once you get one seam in, then it helps you kind of figure out which direction you're going. Let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in a video that focuses on keeping a stitch journal and how to do that. It's really benefited my work immensely because it's a springboard of ideas, and I see something and it helps me decide which direction I'm going to go. Let me know in the comments below if you're interested in a video on keeping a stitch journal. And when you see this stuff, you don't have to do everything exact. You know, you can modify it and change it. My gut says I need to start with something very simple to begin with. Somewhere in here there's a whole bunch that are just sort of Christmas themed. Here we go, little angels, little snowflakes. This is a fun one, sort of dangling down. So I think we're going to do this one. This is a combination stitch actually. It's a herringbone on one side of it, but it's crutton on the other. So I'm thinking we're going to do that herringbone crutton stitch in one of the greens, and then we'll do these little snowflakes in white. Maybe we'll do that one right here. So we need to pick a green for that one. So this brighter green or this more sagey green. I'm actually leaning to this one because it'll pull this color down. So let's do that. I may bring the snowflakes off so they really hang down on the tree just like they would in real life. Let me thread this. So I'm going to start this right up in here. So this side is going to be the crutton side. I just need to have that vertical so I know where I'm going with it. Once I get one stitch in, then it will be easier. So I think I'm going to come straight out with this like I normally would. Then the snowflake will dangle down from that. I'm trying to match what I've already done. Finish that off over here. Now I'm not sure yet exactly how I'm going to be putting this together. I would rather, oh, that one came out really wide. I think that looks better. It's not even, but you know what? That's not going to matter that much in the overall scheme of things. So now we're going to come in with our white. So we have the lazy daisies, but we also have these straight stitches. And then we need to decide if we're going to put a little bead at the end of those, which I think we're probably going to do. So I'll be hunting for some beads here shortly. Let's put the straight stitches in. Now, do I want to put those straight stitches in a heavier thread or a finer thread compared to the lazy daisies? Is this a spot where one strand of this would be good for those straight stitches, I'm thinking. See if we can make sense of my little tangled mess here. There we go. I think we can just get away with one strand of this. And we'll do those straight stitches first. So I also need to think about how big they are because I don't want them running into one another. So let's start this top one. And because they're going to cross one another, I'm not going to tack it down in the center at the moment. And now that they're all three there, now I'll come back and I'm going to put just a little tack right in there, and that will hold them together. And then I'm going to move down to this one. I'm already happy with how this is looking. And so when I'm doing these stars or snowflakes, and I'm just eyeballing it, the trick I found that helps me when I'm doing this without drawing them on first is I'm going to decide what my length is. And again, you can see I'm just eyeballing it, what looks like it's about right. if I'm thinking about those sides and if they were lines all the way around, just trying to imagine where that point would be. So I'm dividing it in thirds. And then on these sides, you're coming straight down and then going straight back across so that that one would come straight down to the one below it. When I pieced this, I didn't butt the edges. I pieced it in the traditional way, so the seams are actually quite thick. Even though this one comes across the seam, I am going to go ahead and put it on there because on a Christmas tree, when you put things down, they overlap. And it'd probably be better to stab stitch that, but I didn't, so I just need to make that one branch a little bit longer, and you'll probably never really notice that join there. So there's the straight stitches. And that rayon thread is pretty slippery, so I'm going to put 2 knots in with that. And I'm just picking up the backing fabric on this. So if I had this to do over again when I pieced this, I probably would have just butted them up to one another, or maybe overlapped them and stitched it that way. Okay, and then we're going to come in with this one and make our little lazy daisies. So we're getting some nice little snowflakes going. They'll look more like snowflakes once we add a couple of little pearly beads to this, I think. So I recently got a comment about asking where I buy my embroidery threads. And the truth is I buy them all over. Regular DMC, if I'm out of a color, I will stop at whatever is close and get it from whatever big box store is carrying it. So it might be Joann Fabrics, it might be Hobby Lobby, it might be Michael's here in the US. If it's pearl cotton, because I prefer the size 12s and the 8s, I generally find that I go down to Denver, where we have a fabulous needlework supply store called The Stitching Shop. And Christine there is wonderful. She has a huge array of threads, and that's where I get my Karen Wildflowers threads. I also get a lot of my more unusual threads from her. A lot of the silk pearls I get down there. I get a lot of my silk ribbon embroidery stuff down there. It's been a wonderful resource to have. Sometimes I order thread online. I'll put links in the description below on a couple of my favorite places to order threads from. Anywhere I travel, I always look to see if there is an embroidery thread shop, needlework shop. Those are all good places to look. And then check quilt stores because a lot of them carry a surprising amount of thread. I go to quilt fairs as well. A lot of times I've gotten my Valdani threads at quilt fairs. There are vendors who will bring a selection of stuff. They've got a huge line, and I've never met anybody who carried the entire line. I watch for threads everywhere, so no one specific place. I have been embroidering for pretty much my entire life, and it's amazing how many people, when they find out that that's what you're doing, they'll say, oh, I have a box of embroidery thread that was my mother's or my grandmother's, and would you like to have it? And I always say yes. And even if I don't necessarily need it, I usually know other people who do, so I'll just pass it along. But that's one of the ways I've amassed my collection of threads, is just from donations from other people. Once I actually got a whole box. In fact, I think I have it here on the shelf. Let me show you. I got this box that was my ex-mother-in-law's. We were doing cross-stitch, and it has cards. At the time, I believe it was every single DMC color that was being manufactured at that time. So this has probably been, oh my gosh. I'm guessing it dates back to the early 1980s. But it's got a little bit of every color and a few extras and little odds and ends of stuff. When she passed away, they asked if I was interested in having that, and I said absolutely. So I have that, and with the fun sheet that shows everything that was on it. So you never know what you're going to get when somebody says, are you interested in this? I always say yes. Like I said, if I can't use it, I usually know somebody who would. I've passed on complete collections of embroidery thread to a few people now. Got just a few lazy daisies left to go. All right, so I think I've got one more lazy daisy. I missed this little gap right over here. Let's find some beads. I think I know right where they're at. I've got an assortment of beads here, and the ones I think I'm really interested in, so I think we have our kind of off-white, the really white, and the kind of in-between. When you are using light colored bead like this on a dark fabric, there's two thoughts on it. So let me show you the difference between them. Now I'm going to go ahead and get a fairly long length here, and I'm going to use my doubled thread like I like to do. So that green thread blends into the fabric. There's a mixed approach. Some people say you need to always match your thread to the fabric, and some people say you need to match it to the bead. I do think it just depends on what the project is, because I think it can go both ways. And it just depends on the impact that you're looking for. But this is a perfect one because this is a high contrast, and so we can look at both and see which one we like better. We're looking to put a little bead in the center, and so if I put one of these in the center, I just need one bead, and I'm doing it with the green thread. Let's come in a little closer here. You almost don't see that thread at all because it blends into the fabric. And if the bead sits to the side, you're going to see it. So now we've done one of those. Let's do one with the white. Now where I'm doing this, because it's in the middle of a lot of other white, you may not notice either one. And so then it's just a matter of which one do you prefer. These are opaque beads, so you can't see through the center of it. So here's the one with the green thread, and here's the one with the white thread. I see that green thread on this one, and it's subtle, but you can see that little dot of green, and it makes the bead look less white. Where this one just looks really white, and you don't see the thread at all. So I'm going to take this one out because I prefer this. You have to check your project and see what you like best. If I had a transparent bead, I might like the look of that green thread going through it. It might change the color. So you have to just play with it. It just seemed like a good moment to discuss possibilities. We're going to pull that bead out. And so when I'm pulling one of these out and I'm trying to get it out with the needle, so hold the thread on either side of the fabric and you kind of pull it back and forth a little bit. You sort of widen that hole and the needle slips right through, especially on something like this wool. And then I'm just going to grab that knot. And that was a different hole, so I need to do the same thing again. Just running that thread through enlarges it ever so slightly and it just pops right out. So we'll leave that there because we may prefer the green in a different spot. But for this one, I wanted the white. Let's go put these little beads around the outside. And especially when I'm going to do the little star beads, I'm going to want those to look really white. I'm not going to want them to look like they've got any green in them at all. I always feel like beads are the icing on the cake. They're the thing that really brings your seam to life. And while the original crazy quilters hardly ever used beads, they rarely did anything other than just embroidery, to be truthful. That's something about modern crazy quilting that I have really enjoyed. And one of the reasons I've amassed so many beads here over the years, because I just really like the way they bring a seam to life. There, isn't that a cute little snowflake? I'm just going to keep going and bead all of these. And in doing that first little snowflake, I discovered I liked the holes of the bead going sideways to that little thing. So I'm coming up, if you can see, just on the outside and coming down on the other side. And then that way the bead kind of points out the little ray. There's so many fun things you can play with beads. Now we're going to come and put one in the center. here. Just keep doing the same thing. So I'll finish this and then we'll be back. Won't take me too long. It'll be a pretty quick turnaround for you. Let's take a look, see what else we need on this. The one thing I'm looking at is that this side is great. I'm happy with my little snowflakes, but I think we need something up here. And I kind of think a little star in each one of those would be perfect. And maybe something up here. This is plastic, so I need to get my scissors marked for wire and ribbon. And that includes fishing line. I need a bead tray, or we're going to have stars everywhere. I don't know why, but these just make me happy. So I'm thinking we're just going to pop a little star in each one of those. I almost wonder if we need some green beads. What do you think? Do we need green beads up here? Or should we do little white ones? I don't want white ones. I think I need some green beads. Well, let me get that out. Let's see what we have with that. I mean, just have that little bit of green sparkle in there, I think makes a difference. It makes it look more finished. So we'll try that. And when I use the green beads, that's when I'm going to want the green thread. Let's stitch some stars on. Now, as I do these stars, I want to look at them because I think they may have one side that's better than the other. Yeah, see, so that one's got a shiny side. Let's move those out of the way. So I think I'm going to come up there. And because these are a little bigger and bulkier, I think I'm going to stitch them on twice just for security and to help hold them in position a little better. And see, just like with the little white round beads, the seed beads, I definitely think it's beneficial to have the white thread because it emphasizes the whiteness of the stars. And you don't see it on the green fabric at all. I'm pleased with that. Looking to see which is the better side. Where's our hole? There it is. One more. The hole is offset, so it throws me a little bit when I'm stitching here. And with these natural mother of pearl buttons, of course, they always have a little bit of minor variation, so not all going to look exactly identical. And then because we're beads, we're doing double knots. 1, 2. So there's our little stars. I'm really happy with that. And now let's use the green beading thread and we're going to stitch on some little green beads. Now I'm not going to stitch one right down here because I don't know where my stitching is going to be there. You can see I did not get my beading mat or my other bead trays out, so we're just going to make do here. And this is going to be just so subtle, but I think it will make a difference. And this one I'm going to put in, if I can find where it went. There it is. And just sort of follow the pattern through. Well, when I was originally thinking about this project and decided I was going to do the white stitching on it, I was thinking I was going to do all white. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because I think the mix of greens and white will make it much better. There is our little snowflake seam with stars. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think I'm going to stop here. Next week we're going to try and stitch a much greater number of seams on this Christmas tree, and I'd like to get it at least halfway, if not a little bit more. If you have any ideas for it, don't hesitate to let me know. I sure appreciate you being here and watching with me. I deeply appreciate your presence. Thanks so much for watching. Have a beautiful day. Happy stitching. I'll see you in the next video.